Welcome to Believe in Chargers, another installment as we are in different locations. We always are, Lo, but today I am not in the comforts of my own home studio. Instead, I am in Indianapolis, and I guess just kind of turn it a little bit. You can see I'm at the Combine. That's the Giants set up behind us. Got the Steelers right in front of me. The Texans are right here to my left. There's the Titans. There's Paul Allen and the Vikings. It's been pretty fun. I've been here in Indianapolis since Monday and getting a lot done, talking to a whole lot of people. Joe Ortiz, the Chargers GM, talked to the media yesterday, so have that presser. Saw our old friend Tom Telesco do it for the Raiders as well, and it's been great. It's been a lot of fun talking to a lot of different people about kind of how this whole thing might shake out for the Chargers.
That's so interesting, Money. I mean, golly, it's like it's awesome to see you there at the combines, man. I wish I could be there to join you, man. Look like you were taking in the combines. It look like you're actually doing some of the drills. I see you all cut up, your nose all cut up, your chin scarred. Money, what the hell's going on? Are you out there trying to do drills with hardball?
Yeah, thankfully, no. Those wouldn't go well. I wouldn't have cuts, though. I'd explode into dust if I had to take any of that stuff on. These are just mountain scars. Went snowboarding with my daughter on Friday and decided to do something I probably shouldn't have, and that was attack a couple jumps. When you're my age, Low, you should just go down the mountain. Don't try to get in the air. Keep the board attached to the ground, not in the air. And
so you got some air though. Did you were you successful? Did you get air? How high were you? And tell me about the landing, because we got to talk about the landing, because evidently it didn't land like we expected.
I wish it was a great story, but it's kind of the rule of going down the hill and skiing and snowboarding. The faster you go, kind of the better off you are. Or at least that's how it's always been for me. And I was just kind of going slow. My daughter wanted me to film her, take some jumps. So I was doing that, and then I just kind of turned around and I was like, there's a quarter pipe with a spine. I'll just hit that real quick and just kind of pop off the corner. And yeah, next thing you know, the way my daughter describes it, Lo, is I looked up and I saw this guy upside down, and I was like, oh, that's not good. And then I was like, oh no, that's my dad. And so I flipped up, landed on my face, like my face broke my fall. Which for me is great because, I have so much to work with that there's room for, for things to get sideways, and I can still keep my beautiful mug. No, as I told her, I was bleeding all over the place, and thought I broke my nose.
Was the powder soft though?
No, it was ice. It was icy.
Oh, so when you so you felt that right away. You're like, okay.
Oh yeah. But again, as someone that likes to, get out and surf and snowboard, I was like, whatever. At least I didn't break an elbow, a shoulder, a knee. It's just my face. I can still do everything I need to do. So I could be here in Indianapolis. It makes for a great story. Like you said, it looks like I belong, like I'm a lot tougher of a person, like I'm a low Neal, which I am not. It makes it look like I'm willing to get in the fracas a little bit. All right. You guys want to tangle? Let's tangle. Look at these scars.
No question. Well, better than you coming back with a story that you got in a bar. You're in there out there trying to move some furniture. So it's great, man. So getting into the combines, what have you seen? Is you out there? Are you going to the different practices? Are you watching? What are you looking for when you're going to the combines, man? I understand this is the Chargers, and we understand we cover the Chargers. But what do you look for? What are some of the things that as a company you say, man, I like this guy? Or what are some of the things you look for when you're looking at the combines when you're there?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Lo, and for me, it's just kind of collecting a decade and a half of covering the combine and opinions that I've heard. And it's interesting because I started to pick up on it. I did it for a number of years on the field. I was fortunate to be on the NFL Network's field set. So I was right there as players were going through drills. And I used to hear scouts say they always wanted to find the alpha. Who was the guy that was leading his particular group? Because they split these things up into groups, right? So today you've got defensive linemen and linebackers, right? So when they go out to work out, you're split up typically by your last name in alphabetical order. And they're looking for the guy that is leading that group. Is there a player that's sort of raised his hand and you just sort of see him as the alpha and all the other linebackers kind of follow his lead? Is he the first one to pick up his stuff and start walking from drill to drill? We're leaving the broad jump. All right, I'm the guy that's grabbing my stuff, and maybe I'm helping somebody clean up, or I'm helping the people that are running the drills, and that exhibits some sort of leadership. So the drills are the drills, right? You're either going to be, you're either a good athlete, a fluid athlete, an exceptional athlete, however you may participate in the drills, the numbers and your eyeballs are going to tell you that. But I think as far as the intangibles, that's kind of a lot of, they're talking to the drill, the coaches, because it's all NFL coaches that direct these drills from current staffs. They just kind of tab them to run these things. what was that interaction like? Did anybody stand out to you? Like, those are the sort of things that people look into that go beyond just sort of what you're watching on the field. But as far as like, the drills, the 3-cone, I mean, Lo, you went through it, you did the combine, so like the agility drills are always interesting. For the big guys, the defensive ends, like who are going to be out there today, watching that bend as they do this sort of, they lay down these 3 hoops and you got to grab the bags as you're going around, and you can just kind of see that lean and envision, what kind of bend they have. So that's a fun one. The 3-cone obviously shows off that agility. So there's a lot of different things you can take in. They go beyond just the athletic feats that they're exhibiting while they're out there at Lucas Oil.
Yeah, I remember when being at the combines, man, it's like, for me, I saw the way the guys did. And I was like, God, that guy can, can run. He could do certain things. I seen the speed. And, sometimes you're jealous and you envy. But for me, it's like, okay, but put me in pads. And how do you, different? Put me in pads. I knew that, hey, look, I know that, hey, I don't care how fast that lineman, I know I can run his ass over. Hey, I know that if I can beat him to the flat, hey, look, this is what it's going to happen. So there's different intangibles. I know running backs might have been faster, but I said, you know what? I know that I run harder. I know that I can get. So when you're looking at just from an athletic standpoint, and then from a physicality, or just those tangibles, what are some of those things that scouts look for, that's saying, okay, this guy might not have that, but here's what I seen. He's a football player.
So I think what I always hear, Lo, is it will either confirm what you already know. Like, here's my write-up from watching, all the tape on this guy or seeing him in person. Here's what I think he is. You come to the combine and it's, oh yeah, that's exactly what he is. I knew he was going to have explosiveness. I knew he was going to crush the vert and the broad jump, because that's what I think I see. And yes, that's right. This is an explosive athlete, because he just jumped, his vertical's 10, he just broad jumped 10 feet. His vertical's 33 inches and the guy weighs 270 pounds. Yeah, he's an explosive athlete. Then there's the flip side of that, where you think a guy is, you have him ranked super high, and then he gets out here and he looks stiff and he can't run. And you're like, okay, was I grading him on a lower level of competition? Now I got to dig back into this, okay, who exactly, let's just say it's a tackle. It's an offensive tackle. And you're like, okay, now I got to go back to the tape, and maybe he wasn't facing the team's best defensive end. Maybe that guy was hurt that day, even though he was playing Alabama, the guy, Dallas Turner was out. And so I wasn't grading him right because I was only watching the O-lineman. I wasn't paying attention to what the number was that was rushing opposite him. So it'll do that, if for whatever reason it doesn't look right. So I think that's, in terms of what's happening on the field, that's essentially what the scouts are using the combine for. And then, guy just flashes and you're like, okay, how did I miss this? Like everybody knew. I was talking to Bruce Feldman earlier, who does the Freak List every year and works for Fox. And it really is one of the great things in football when he puts it out every year. But he was talking about Tariq Woolen, and how, he was on his radar from the get-go. Here's a guy who's 6'4", and is running a darn near a sub 4.3 40, has a 7-foot wingspan. It's like, how does that guy slip to the 4th round? And then, of course, darn near wins the Defensive Rookie of the Year. Maybe he did win it and becomes a standout corner. Like, those are the sort of things I remember watching him here. And like, why are people not drafting this guy? What am I missing? I watched this gigantic freaking Mothra of a human being fly all over the place, and yet for some reason still slid. And I think that's where you have to let your eyes tell you, okay, it was UTSA, it was lower level competition. We're a little worried about that. How many 6'4" corners are really good in the league? Not many. It tends to be a little too tall. We're here at the combine. I've seen it. I'm watching this guy destroy the drills and looks like the best athlete out of the most athletic group of players that are here. Sometimes you just got to trust your eyes and be like, yeah, that plays. What that guy's doing there plays in the NFL.
And with that being said, Matt, as I digress, and we talked about what are you looking for or what guys do at the combine. Now let's get a little bit more specific. When you talk about the Chargers, what are they looking for when you're talking to the GM? What are they looking for? Are you seeing guys that is it going to change their trajectory in the draft? And how does that happen? How much does a combine weigh in on changing people's position in the draft?
Yeah. So if you were to tell me, like, what's the one thing that the Chargers want to come out of the combine, it's the continued rise of JJ McCarthy. I think he has now separated himself from Bo Nix and Michael Penix as the 4th quarterback. It feels like, and talking to everybody, hear that it's going to go quarterback 1, 2, 3. That's going to happen. That Caleb will go 1, and then it'll be Drake May and Jaden Daniels. So I think for the Chargers, they're hoping, because none of those guys are throwing, none of them are doing drills. So JJ is doing it all, and he'll have Indianapolis to himself when it comes to quarterbacks. Now Bo Nix is going to work it, Penix is going to work as well, so he's competing against those guys. But I think best case for the Chargers is JJ McCarthy continues to be somebody that is of interest, especially the Kyle Shanahan style offense teams, the Sean McVay teams. Like you think about Raheem Morris going to Atlanta, taking Zach Robinson with him. They need a quarterback. Like, you want them to fall in love with JJ McCarthy and say, we can't afford to let Minnesota jump us to 5. And we can't afford to let the Raiders or the Broncos, and we want to go from 8 to 5. And that's how the Chargers get to trade back, pick up that extra pick, maybe in the second round and a future first, depending on how far back they go. And they're still able to do, because, Joe Ortiz had his presser yesterday, and I think it was 100% by design. When asked about, the talent here and the group this year, he said, look, wide receiver class is very deep. Like, I read it into that is Joe saying, I don't have to take wide receiver at 5. I know everybody wants to give us Malik Neighbors because we have Justin Herbert as our quarterback, but this wide receiver group is so deep. We're going to get somebody that's really, really good in the second round or in the third round. We don't have to take that at 5. We're good building our lines. And so I think if you trade back, you can still take the top tackle. And we had Sam Monson. I was talking to him from PFF, and he made a great point. He's like, to me, if you're the Chargers, you have one of the best left tackles in the league. You've got Rashawn Slater. So if it's going to be a right tackle, you could take Joe Alt and put him at right tackle because he's an exceptional athlete. He's a giant human being, and it'll probably work. But why wouldn't you just trade back even further and take Fuaga from Oregon State, who's the best right tackle in the draft? And when he puts his hands on you in the run game, it's over. You are done. You are out of the play. And so I think those are the sort of things that they're going to start exploring, Lo, as we kind of continue to work our way through this process.
Yeah, and when you're doing that and you're talking about continuing to explore and getting guys and maybe trade back to get more picks, and I totally understand that where you're talking about money. But what does that do? What does that say about free agency? When you think free agency is right around the corner, how does that play into the draft? What do you look at the chart and you say, okay, this is some of the needs that they can get in free agency, and here's how do you differentiate between free agency and the draft?
Well, I think, and we talked to Chad Alexander, who's the new assistant GM, came over from the Jets and worked with Joe Ortiz for, 2 decades in Baltimore under Ozzie Newsome. And, I think he said they're all from the Baltimore school, right? And and I think most teams would say this anyway. The draft is the lifeblood of your organization. You need to bring these young men in and develop them the way you believe players are to be developed, think about how long John Harbaugh has been at Baltimore. You know what a Raven looks like. Like you can visualize. I mean, you were one, Lo. You were a Raven, so there's a reason why they signed you, because you have that Ravens DNA inside you. Toughness, love football, self-sacrifice. Like, those are, when I think of the Ravens, that's what I think, and I think of an organization that develops players. So that's where I think the trading back comes into it. And when you talk about free agency, that's where the Khalil Mack, and that's something that's kind of going around here, that there are teams interested perhaps in making a play for Khalil Mack, that they would be interested in making a trade for him. It's really the only name of those 3, because I think everybody is under the impression that Keenan Allen's going to get his contract reworked and he's going to be sticking around with the Chargers. So I think of Joey, Khalil, and Mike Williams. Khalil's the only name that I've heard brought up as far as there's a little bit of buzz from other teams, and that works in conjunction with free agency, right? Who are the free agent defensive ends? Are what you have to pay. Well, what you have to pay for them, and what they bring, is that worth more than what you have in Khalil Mack if you have to give up, maybe a third, maybe a comp third level pick for him?
Right. So you're hearing maybe a third or fourth, or maybe possibly, and he's maybe late second for Khalil. That's the kind of value they think that.
I think it's probably more late third, fourth would probably be where that comes in. They're valuable pick. Second's an incredibly valuable pick. So because I was surprised when I brought that up to some of these people. I was like, hey, what do you think these guys would fetch? You know, could Joey get a second? And most of them were like, I don't think so.
Wow.
Or at least they were like, that's not what I'm hearing. Now, with the cap spiking as much as it did, up to 255 million, you know, going up 30 million, maybe that opens the door for the Chargers to say, oh, you know what, we can rework these. Let's keep them around. Let's keep Joey. Let's keep Khalil. Let's keep Keenan. Let's keep Mike. You know, and figure out a way, because of where we're at and what their injury history is, can we rework these numbers so they're not cut, so they're not out on the street, and you know, not can we find a way to make it team friendly and player friendly in light of the fact that we've got $30 million more to play with because of the cap spike?
Sure. I remember Matt, you know, going to the combines. I remember being at Fresno State wrestling on Saturday night, right? And the combine. So wrestling beat Oklahoma State. We had a wrestling duel. So I was like, my coach got me to do this. And then I was supposed to fly out like at 4:00, fly out of Fresno. So I was going to get there, you know, that night, sleep Sunday. How about my flight got delayed? I'll go overtime. I win the match. We win the duel. Coach DeLito takes me to the airport. My flight out of Fresno's delayed, not leaving to the red eye. So I'm friggin' jumping on the red eye. I get to friggin' have like 2 hours to lay down. When I get to my hotel, I had a horrible combine. I did 225 like 25 times. I've been doing it 38 times, 40 times. I ran a 4.7. I came back because my coach was there to pick me up at the airport. Dennis DeLito, the wrestling coach, like he wanted to pick me up because he's like, I'm sorry. I walked away from him. I got my own ride home. I was so pissed at my wrestling coach because I was at the combines of that, and I absolutely stunk it up because it's vigorous. You got to work out. These guys are pulling on you. You got the physical. Why don't you tell the listeners what's the typical week for these guys and what they got to go on each day?
Well, I got it right here on the computer in front of me, Lo. So I'll tell you exactly what it looks like. So here we go. The defensive line and linebacking group are the ones that they're on the field today. They got here on Sunday. They go through the pre-exam on Monday. You know what that is. They try to rip your arms off your body. They try to twist your knee into a pretzel. It's a really weird situation. You got a bunch of dudes in lab coats that are treating you like, you know, your body's supposed to be Stretch Armstrong, and you're just, what is this guy doing? Like, I remember, I think it was like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I can't remember who the player was, but like got not into a physical altercation, but like stood up and sort of bowed up on one of the doctors because he didn't know. He was like, man, this guy's trying to break my arm. The doctors are like, yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. We're seeing how, you know, we are trying to break your arm to some degree. So yeah, you got all upset. So they go through that orientation, and then they had their team interviews Monday as well, which is, if you're a team, you can put in for a specific number of interviews. You don't get to interview everybody. You have to submit who you want to interview. A lot of times, they're not going to do the first rounders because those are players, if it's their first round or even their second round pick, those are the players that are going to fly out, and they're going to bring them to their facility, and they're going to do the deep dive. But so they're looking for like, okay, we like this guy in the fourth. Those are the type of interviews they want to get to, because that's sort of, they don't know if that guy's going to be available when they pick, but they like him. So let's just kind of figure out if we can check that box. So they do the team interviews. Yesterday, yesterday's actually the big medical exam. So actually yesterday's when they got the pre-exam is just kind of height, weight. Let's get that all out of the way. Then you get the general medical. Then you get the studies. If there's anything that came back that's flagged, now you got to go through a secondary medical. I mean, ultimately, like, we think of the combine as the drills. Combine's medical. That's what this is. And there's a reason why it's in Indianapolis, because the hospital's right here and everything is central. So all these teams can get their doctors in here. You have the general medical staff, and that's what they want to find out. You know, if we're going to be investing millions, and in some cases tens of millions of dollars, we don't want you showing up after we draft you and you're not going to play football because there's a medical issue. So that's ultimately, that's what this is all about. It's all about the medicals. So then what are we at today? Wednesday. So today, these guys are going through all their media interviews, their team interviews, and then they'll get on the field tomorrow for their workout. And then the following day on Friday, they'll do their bench and get out of here.
Okay, so it's 4 days
Very
of
similar.
work. So is it 4 days of on the field work? 3 to 4 days on the field work?
2 days on the field, yeah. Well, not really. So 1 day on the field, right? You have all your drills on the field, but then the next day you end up doing bench. So you come over here where I'm sitting right now, bench will be directly to my left, which is why I'm pointed the opposite way if you're watching this on TV. But yeah, to my left is where they set up the bench, which is always funny because it's just, a
Right.
meathead screaming
Yeah.
at you, come on,
Let's go.
you know.
Fast people screaming, patting their head, slapping themselves
Exactly
in the face.
right.
Exactly. I love that part of it. Matt, tell the listeners, what do you think? How much does it have to do with character? I know guys are athletic, and tell all those different things, but how much does it have to do with sometimes character? How far can a guy slide? What are you hearing about different guys as far as the off the field and different things like that nature? How big is that? And what kind of part does that play in the draft?
Yeah, I'll just give you one name because it was brought up to me by Bruce Feldman, and it's a Michigan guy, and it's someone who very well could end up in a Charger uniform because Jim Harbaugh told him that this guy was the mutant of mutants, and it was Chris Jenkins, and he mentioned Chris, and his dad certainly, played a long time with the Panthers on the defensive line, so he's got he's got the pedigree and the genetics, and they said Bruce said when he showed up at Michigan. He was 245 pounds, I think, 245. And Bruce got pretty deep into the Ben Herbert, who's been hired by Jim and brought from Michigan, and just what Ben Herbert was able to do with that team. And now we've got Chris Jenkins over 300 pounds, yet he's still going to just crush the athletic drills, all the agility stuff, the explosiveness, the vert, the broad, the 40. And he said he's going to get underneath 225 pounds and throw it up, at numbers you can't quite comprehend. So that's the story of character, right? That's the story of development. That's the story of a love for football that goes into that goes beyond what you just see on the field. But it's like, to me, that's one of those stories. Like, okay, well, here's a 6-foot defensive tackle. Those guys tend to be, you're not going to really put a gold star next to him because you're a little worried about the size. But no, this guy's an outlier. This guy loves it. This guy, wakes up, every morning and eats football for breakfast. And that's clear in the way he's developed, And so, like, those are the things that stand out, I think, like you're talking about, that go beyond just what you saw on tape and what you'll see on the field here.
Well, Matt, I know a lot of people, it's a team that we don't like, and I know just Chargers don't like them, and every time they seem to spoil, I think they helped fire the last Charger coach, is the Raiders.
Yeah.
Tell us kind of what you're hearing there. I know we got Kolesko that's there. What's kind of their thought process? Because I know Charger fans want to know what they're up against.
Well, I think, as it relates to the Chargers, it's a player that they may be interested in if they can get some things worked out, money wise. I would be real surprised if Jim Harbaugh didn't say Josh Jacobs was a Jim Harbaugh kind of player. I mean, he to me is the epitome in terms of like a free agent running back that would fit, what Harbaugh likes to do. Someone that gets stronger as the game goes on, someone that's tough between the tackles, that's great in pass pro, that can catch the ball out of the backfield as well, does not go down easy. So, and Tom Telesco was asked about Josh, because he just got hired and they declined the 5th-year option already, played on the franchise tag. And he basically said, we're going to figure something out. Tom was very adamant about, this is a Raider. This is a Raider type of player. This is a franchise cornerstone, and we're going to get something figured out. So that's probably the most interesting thing. He was asked about trading Devontae Adams. I wouldn't have ever guessed that he would say, yeah, we're open for business on that. But he just said Devontae's a Raider. And I think clearly they're in the quarterback market. I haven't really heard much buzz about the Russell Wilson or the Justin Fields thing here. There's a little bit of heat on Fields to the Steelers, but outside of that, I haven't really heard anything. We had Ryan Poles yesterday say that he wants to do right by Justin if they're going to draft a quarterback, that they want to trade him before free agency. And I only bring that up because then that can eliminate potentially one of those teams that might trade up to take the Chargers pick at number 5 and get you a couple more picks. But as far as the Raiders go, I saw Antonio Pierce last night, as a matter of fact.
Tell him I said what's up when you see him. If you catch him again.
If I see him tonight again, I will.
Yeah,
I absolutely will.
Please do. What about Denver? I know we talking about just kind of going through kind of the division that the Chargers have to see. What are you hearing anything about Denver? What they might be their moves, or what about Russell or anything that Denver might do, a trade possibly with the Chargers? Any signs there?
Not, I mean, outside of just Russell's gone. He's that's not happening, and it doesn't sound like there's any teams interested in trading for him, because why trade for a $39 million contract when you can just pay him 1.75 veterans minimum, since the Broncos are already paying him all that money. I could totally see them drafting a quarterback at, at 12 or 13, wherever they are. At 12, I think they are. So like that, JJ McCarthy, I think fits with what Sean Payton loves, toughness, smarts. That's definitely, you think about Drew Brees, accuracy, comfortability throwing in the middle of the field. I think JJ checks all of those boxes. So I think they'd certainly be in the market. I could see Bo Nix, who also toughness, accuracy, a winner, a lot of starts under his belt. You could see him coming right in and just stepping into a program as great of a coach as Peyton is. So I could totally see them drafting a quarterback. Of all those teams, if they were to stick, they don't have the picks, I think, to jump up. They've expended them all in the Russell Wilson deal.
With that being said, let's save the best for last, and you know who that is. That's Super Bowl champs, Kansas City Chiefs. What do you see Kansas City doing? What are you hearing there? Do they just reload? What do you think about that organization?
Yeah, they drafted so well. If you just think about that defense and all the draft picks, not to mention, the offensive line picks and Creed Humphrey and Smith, you think about Pacheco in the 7th round, how well he fits. Obviously, receiver had an issue, but Rice looks like one of the better receivers to come out from last year. So they've got that covered. Defensively, they're stacked with a ton of young talent. L'Jarius Sneed, I think Brett Veach yesterday, I think I saw it making the rounds, that franchise him and maybe try to figure out a deal or a trade, but I think in the interim it's a franchise deal. And I think they cut Valdez-Scantling today, which you knew was coming because that was $12 million, and it's not like he did much anyway, although he did have a huge catch in the championship game there. So I think for them, unfortunately, for the rest of the AFC West, they're a team that's pretty well going to be intact. They've got so much young talent on rookie contracts that they're able to, keep all these guys around as long as Travis Kelce wants to keep playing football. I would assume they're going to give Chris Jones that long-term deal because that's just one of the best defensive players in the league. And yeah, it's going to be a tough one to knock off, right?
Yeah, you can't let that Chris Jones, you can't let him leave the building. That guy, what he brings to the table for 100%. Kansas City, he's amazing. Matt, there's a position, I always talk about it. We brought it up last week and just want to see, do you see if you're in the same kind of sphere that I'm in? When you talk about, quarterback's best friend, do you see this league changing, that the tight end may be a higher paid than receivers? Is the tight end new quarterback's best friend because the blocking, they're too fast for too fast for linebackers, too physical for DBs? Is that the new? Do you think that's going to pass the receiver position?
So I think I'm going to refer to Bruce again because of the freaks list, because Brock Bowers is in that conversation, right? And kind of the way he put it was, he said, don't think of Brock Bowers as a tight end. He said, put it this way: if Kyle Shanahan could figure out how to get his hands on Brock Bowers, it would be illegal. Like the NFL would not know what to do with what Kyle could envision and how he would have that work. He basically, the way he described it was, imagine you take a kid from Napa, freaking wine country, California. He makes his way down to the toughest league in college football and starts mauling people. Just the second he hits the field, he is a California kid that is at Georgia, and he is running over dudes like it's easy. And he's like, so he's not big enough, he's not that prototypical size. He goes, just throw that out the window. It's like, all you have to do is watch him play football in the toughest conference in the nation, and what he did to people and how he's like, Bruce said, he's like, dude, that's a Jim Harbaugh player. He's like, that dude, if there was a player that I would circle in this draft that you would say, oh yeah, that's a Harbaugh kind of guy, because it's Brock Bowers. Now, whether or not that means they'll draft him, I can't say, but I think that's kind of what you're speaking to, right? I don't think it's necessarily positional. I think it's individual. Look how important. Look, I'm not going to argue how important Amon-Ra St. Brown is to the Lions, but man, Sam Laporta was kind of was Jared Goff's go-to guy, on the money down. So I think it just kind of depends on the individual as to where you place that value and how they fit your team. And we saw it in Justin's rookie year. Hunter Henry, when he got in the red zone, it wasn't Keenan Allen time. It was Hunter Henry time. Like, he was going for Hunter, who, by the way, is going to be a free agent. And,
Right.
no problem bringing him back, to fill one of those tight end spots. That's for sure.
No question. Well, how do people, if they're going to get on the draft and go bet online, why don't you tell our listeners how they could do that, Matt? Because it's always been great chatting you two and going over these combines.
Yeah, no doubt. We love Bet Online. And look, the football season has come to an end. Yes, indeed it has. But it's your number one source for basketball wagering needs. Pro and college hoops throughout the year, up to the minute odds, stats, trends. Follow your favorite team's path to the playoffs, in-game live betting. They got contests. They got player props. And it's just an easy platform. It's the best platform. You can do it from your desktop, from your mobile. Bet Online today is where you want to go, and use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. It gets you 50% of a welcome bonus on your first deposit. Again, the code BLEAV, and it's Bet Online as the game starts here. There you go, Lo.
There we go. So you like how tied? Hey, Matt, you like how I'm tying it in? I'm following your lead, baby.
Exactly right.
Following your lead.
Exactly right. I'll get back to this madness here, and we'll have, I think, a lot of intel next week, and maybe a better idea of what this thing's going to look like as free agency and cap compliance is growing closer. Because remember, they got to get out of the cap by the start of the league year, so that's going to be right upon us, and we'll have an idea of how they're going to deal with these 4 contracts. With the Joey, Mike Williams, Khalil, and Keenan deals.
No question. Well, hey, enjoy the combines, Matt, and stat of trouble, man. Hopefully that nose heals up well.
Real close there it is.
I see you, baby. I see you, brother.
All right,
vitamin E. Put a little bit of vitamin E. I'll get a little vitamin E. I'll put that, man. Stop it from scarring. Old school.
I need the scars, Lo.
Oh, gee,
I need the scars. I need a little more character in my life.
I can't with you. I can't with you, Matt. You're the best. Cheers.
You're the best. All right. We appreciate y'all.